Hi, I'm James Allison. I'm the technical director of the team, and I'm here to answer your questions after the Bahrain Grand Prix. So why did we choose to use soft tyres in our middle stint in the race? Well, you have to go back to the beginning of the weekend to understand the answer to this question. Every weekend we show up with a certain number of tyres of different types, soft, medium and hard, according to the way the rules of the sport are structured. And then we attack our Friday in a way to give us the answer as to which tyres are going to give us our best result on the Sunday. All the teams do this. All the teams run the different compounds and try to make a judgment about what will suit their car the best. After our Friday program, it was quite clear to us that we gave our best results over a stint on the soft tyres. So we wanted to use as many as possible of those soft tyres in the race. That meant in a two-stop race, running 2 sets of the soft and then 1 set of the medium. Other teams arrived at different conclusions because their results on the Friday pushed them in different directions. Ferrari, for example, were particularly competitive on the medium tyre, so they ran soft, medium, medium. But for us, our quickest race was found by going soft, soft and medium, and so that's what we did. After a really strong showing in Melbourne with Valtteri, it was a little bit of a surprise also to us to find that he had a tough race in Bahrain. After a very good getaway from the flag, he then struggled a bit compared with Lewis. And after the race, he was saying that the car didn't really feel good. He didn't feel the car under him well. The balance was very inconsistent, struggling from corner to corner and unable really to get the car to fly in the way that he had so easily been able to do in Melbourne. Why was that? Well, it's difficult to know for sure. I think on the day, everyone was having a tough time. It was a very, very windy race and not at all an easy set of conditions to drive in, on a track that is notorious for wearing out the tyres, especially the rear tyres, and giving a car that gets increasingly tricky to drive as the tyres get older. And when you get a car that is critical like that because of the track conditions, because of the wind, because of the wearing tyres, very small things can quite easily build up to give a big performance difference because the effects are cumulative. A small amount of tyre damage in one corner here, another corner there, gradually eats away at the performance capability of the car and ends up producing big differences at the end of the race. Almost the mirror image, in fact, of what we saw with Lewis in Melbourne just a couple of weeks ago. So no one identifiable single thing, just lots of little things that end up with a cumulative result that was disappointing for Valtteri and something that he will want to bounce back from in the next race. The wind really did play a part in the Bahrain race. Wind always affects a Formula One car, but in the desert of Bahrain, it affects it twice. Not just because the aerodynamics of the car are disturbed, and they really are when the wind is coming at you from different angles as you enter and leave corners, but also because that high wind whips in dust off the desert, which coats the track. And where we can normally expect on a Sunday for the racetrack to get gradually cleaner and cleaner during the race, when there is wind in a track like Bahrain, then it's continually recoated with a layer of dust, which makes the car grip the road less well and adds to the troubles that were already a factor caused by the wind. So yeah, it's a big deal, and probably at the beginning of the race was accounting for something like a second a lap compared with what we might have expected in a less windy event. Undercuts play a big part in the strategic choices made by the teams. That's because over the course of a stint, tyres gradually get slower and slower, meaning that if you come in and put fresh tyres on, you go a lot quicker. That gives you opportunities around a pit stop to jump in front of someone by putting on a faster set of tyres and throwing in a quick lap and perhaps surprising someone who stayed out on the track. Now at a normal circuit, the amount that the tyre gets slower by over a stint is about 1 second. So at the end of your stint, if you come in, you can put new boots on and you can effectively get a jump of about 1 second relative to your opponent. Bahrain is a very different sort of track. Here the asphalt is super rough, super hard on the tyres. And as a result, instead of just slowing down by 1 second over the tyre life, they slow down by about 2.5 seconds, which means that the car who comes in first and puts on fresh rubber will go insanely faster for a lap or two compared with the one that stayed out. And that means you can really jump forward by a huge amount. We saw this illustrated probably most strongly with Lewis in his second stop relative to Sebastian. Before the stop, Lewis was about 3.5-4 seconds behind Sebastian. One lap of fresh rubber after the stop, and he was able to close up almost to the back of Sebastian's car, giving us the chance then to attack and eventually overtake him. So in Bahrain, the undercut becomes a really, really important tool for the strategist and often determines the outcome of the race. Did we consider a one-stop with Valtteri in the race? Well, yes, we did. And in fact, we considered it also with Lewis, and we considered a two-stop and a three-stop. Every race, before we actually conduct the race itself, we scan through all the strategic options, trying to do the maths to make sure we make the right decision on the day. So we weigh up one stop, we weigh up two, we weigh up three. And when we looked at the numbers from Bahrain, it was very clear on the Friday, in fact it was our guess before we even arrived there, that this was going to be a two-stop race. The tyres at Bahrain have a really hard time. The track is super rough and it wears away the rubber really quickly. Furthermore, the tyres for this year have less tread on them than last year, which means that they run out of their life even quicker as a result. And so where last year was a marginal one stop, just possible if you were really delicate, this year it looked pretty nailed on for a two stop. And you saw with all the cars on the grid that they ended up going for two stops. And it was the quickest strategy. So we considered it, we worked out the numbers, but fairly early on we were concentrating on a two stop. And in the race itself there was nothing to make us change our mind on that. Two stops was the quickest way, and one stop would have been incredibly difficult and a lot slower. Probably the simplest answer is because this is a really, really difficult sport where you have to get absolutely everything perfect if you want to have a weekend like you had in Melbourne. We were immensely strong there and everything seemed to go our way. We'd expected a much tougher result in Australia. Coming off of winter testing, we expected perhaps even to be chasing a Ferrari in front of us. But instead we found ourselves flying in every session, in qualifying, in race and in the free practice, and able to just effortlessly breeze out into the lead and get a really strong result. And then we go to Bahrain and instead we find ourselves on the back foot. Very different tracks with different characteristics. And we, right from the outset, had a car that was a little bit unhappy. Where it had flown in Melbourne, we had a car instead in Bahrain that was a bit nervous at the rear end, which was a bit hard on its tyres, which was suffering a little bit with overheating at the rear. All those things meant that we just lose a tenth or two here or there, and compared to a Ferrari that seemed to be having in Bahrain the weekend that we'd had just 2 weeks earlier in Melbourne. It's a really difficult sport to get everything just right. And the key thing is, when you're having a difficult weekend like we just had, to make sure that you don't give up, to make sure that you keep in every session trying to get the car pushed further up the grid to be able to go quicker and quicker and able to get as much as possible from it. So a huge result for us and a great relief, therefore, on a weekend where we were not that competitive, to come back with such a strong haul of points. To come back with those points and also to come back with clear indications of what we need to do and the directions we need to take to develop our car so that we will not suffer the same sort of problems that we had with it in Bahrain. And of course, our aim will be that over the course of the season, we bring enough performance to the car that even when we stumble slightly, we can still be out in front. That's the aim of every team, but it's one that we're determined to deliver on here, and one that we've been reasonably good at over previous seasons. So lots of work for us to do, but a really happy result from what was otherwise quite a difficult weekend. Thank you very much for all your questions, and we'll be back after the Chinese Grand Prix to answer another load of them.